Very welcome to another edition of Page 180. Guys, obviously, we kind of mainly focus on TV and movies here, but we do also discuss the world of sport on Page 180, and we are about to overdose the entire country. If you're not watching, I am already decked out here in my Castor new Irish jersey. I managed to get one literally in my size off the shelf. I don't know how, a couple of weeks ago, because they are selling out, because we are readying ourselves for potential Italian 90-like scenes as the Irish women's national team takes center stage. They've captured the imaginations and qualified for the World Cup for the first time ever. So again, like, there's a lot of potential for huge stories and kind of the country to come together as only we can. And we haven't got an opportunity with the men's team in so long. And even the opportunities that we have got, we haven't been able to do too much with them. So really exciting, cannot wait, and really wanted to get in and discuss it. And of course, whenever there's a big sports story that I want to get into, discuss, who am I going to call but my old Paddy's New Yacht running partner, the one, the only Irish Examiner's David Kent, aka Kento. You're very welcome to Paddy's New Yacht. Kento, I understand it's been a busy few weeks for you with the Examiner. Obviously, I can only imagine the type of stuff that's kept you busy there at the Examiner.
Yeah, so Jer, what do you want to talk about, to borrow a phrase from another famous man? Yeah, I mean, I've been doing writing for, it's coming up to 12 years. I've never had a 10-day stretch, just with the sheer amount of different, like, obviously there's the one main story which we might get into, but there was also five or six little ones that just broke, and it was by far the busiest period I've ever had as a writer, and I know it's the same for a couple of my colleagues in other publications as well, because it's just every day is different when you're a journalist anyway. But this was just a new level.
Mm. The headline, obviously, Ryan Tubridy, you've been covering the Oireachtas committee meetings. Talk us through how that's been like. Again, you were literally sitting there having to report live on kind of everything with Tubridy, Noel Kelly, RTE. How are you feeling kind of about it all now? Are you just sick of it at this stage because you've had
It
to
it
do minute by minute, or is it still kind of
like
still fresh for you?
it feels so long ago that the chief financial officer of RTE was unsure of what exactly his salary was, and that was the big story out of the very first meeting. And then the next session happened, and there was another big story, and then you had Ryan and O'Kelly offering to appear, and they refuted the claims. They had evidence to back up what they were saying. And then Kevin Backhurst comes in on the Thursday, and he has evidence to back up on what they were saying about Ryan Tubridy, and how Ryan Tubridy and Noel Kelly weren't exactly true in what they were saying. And it's it was something that I think you may have said it on the show here before, but you definitely said it on social media as well. This could have been a story that just bubbled over, like, had a couple of days, and then we all forgot about it because we all weren't really too angry about it, and it just snowballed into a point where you had the flagship presenter of RTE for the last 15 years, like, being visibly uncomfortable and visibly irritated, being questioned by politicians who, I think there were obviously some standouts for the TDs and senators. A lot of them will probably look back on their sessions and on the meetings and rue what they did with their time. You had a couple who maybe realized that there was a lot more people watching these committees than, like, the Public Accounts Committee, which would usually get a small enough viewership. And I think the Oireachtas press office came out and said that viewership rose tenfold for the first session of the Oireachtas committee with Ryan Tubridy on the Tuesday, which is, like, at the previous record would have been, I think, John Delaney's FAI one, which was obviously 4 years ago at this point, and that was small enough even still. So it was just chaotic. It was a bit of a mess overall in terms of what we kind of learned coming out of it that we didn't learn in, like, the first couple of appearances. We had obviously the barter account was the main kind of focus, and the spending, and then subsequently what when RT or the yeah sorry RT providing all the documents that Alan Kelly had asked for, in a remarkable, like, the amount of stuff he's since asked for as well. That was a credit to staff that were like on the ground in RT, having to print all that out, make 10 or 15 copies of it for all their centers and TDs, and to get that turned around in the space of about 5 days, incredible work. But then we got to see them bear out on the brunt of it, and it didn't make for fun reading from a Joe Soap point of view. We had, and then like I think Live Line then the following morning, a story is big when everyone is singing off the same hymn sheet on Live Line, and this was one of them that was. The last time that I can remember that happening, and I'm going to give a shout out to the Examiner here, that was Golfgate, where the whole country was just around the one thing, and it was all the same opinion, and it was that this is not right.
Yeah, it's insane. But like, look, a lot of fun for the rest of us, because it's us getting to watch. Like, I read a great article this week. It wasn't in the Examiner. There is great articles in there, but it was Dave McWilliams spoke about how Ireland is built of insiders and outsiders, and kind of it's something that resonated a lot for me, because I feel like you're either selected or you're not. But this was a bunch of insiders just throwing shit at each other. Do you know what I mean? And unfortunately, I feel the end result is that nothing much will change. This was just a bit of hot air drama. I feel there may be some kind of face level changes, you know what I mean? But I don't think ultimately we're going to get the kind of the revolution that we think we're going to get at the end. I think it's just going to be drama, but it is fun to see insiders kind of throwing dirt at each other, and the drama and the mess of it all, and the fact that all of us are like, I don't care who loses. We're all very much happy to see the ship go down. Some ridiculous stuff coming out as well, people being like, somebody is a national treasure or the most trusted man in Ireland. I'm like, you are not outside with the rest of us. You are not looking at it from the perspective that we have it. I've also got a pet peeve for me, like, because I've always been 50-50 on Tubridy, you know what I mean? I'm not never sure how I felt. If I never loved him, like he was never in my heart or anything, but I kind of like would admire some stuff he would do, and I'd admit that he is skilled at his job, particularly when it came to the toy show. I kind of respected and appreciated him then, but this kind of made up my mind on him, because I've got a pet peeve that anyone who brings up stuff like charity work or working with children when nobody asked, just an automatic tosser. So like, put him in the bin. I'm like, that's just me and like the way I feel about people. But then again, also there was a part of me, and I still don't get to have a clean opinion about Ryan Tubridy, because as the day wore on, and as hour upon hour upon hour saw him stand in the stand and have to defend himself, I'm like, I don't care if I didn't do anything wrong and I was there, I just happened to be there. If you put me on the stand and have people grill me about my job, I'd find a way to get sacked after 4 or 5 hours. I just say something wrong. So there was a part of me that almost grudgingly admired him. But anyway, look, interesting times, but not what we're here to discuss. We are here to discuss some actual national treasures. The Irish women's national team, Vera Pauw's team, obviously, she's been mired in her own controversy. And we're heading into this seminal moment where, on one hand, you have this amazing, beloved group of players led by, a manager who, in Vera Pauw, I've said is probably the most, in Ireland anyway. I know there's controversy around her, and we can kind of touch on that, but like, the most beloved manager I think we've had since Big Jack, and we have the likes of Katie McCabe as well, and we have like just these players who nobody has any issues with. We're all kind of beloved, even though like people seem desperate to kind of throw dirt on them from the outside, but it's just not penetrating, and it's just not changing how we feel. But then on the other hand, and like, there's this hugely positive story that they're going for it, and they've got a couple of upsets along the way and kind of defied the odds to get here. But on the other hand, that fairy tale story over the past couple of weeks, if we're being really honest, I started to come apart a little bit on the seams, and things hasn't been the positive run up we wanted. Obviously, you've had the resurfacing for no particular reason. The Athletic just decided to drudge up old dirt with the Vera Pauw kind of non-scandal, that I call it, with the NWSL accusations that actually don't have any accusations tied to them, where it's not actually something she's done wrong. It's just general and grumbling of disapproval. But then also you have like kind of the draw that we got. Again, you have an incredibly tough group with Australia, helmed by perhaps the best women's player on the planet today, Sam Kerr. You've got the Olympic gold medalist Canada. You've got Nigeria, the best team in Africa. They're also a team in turmoil now. And then you've got kind of the recent scandal even this week. We had injury scares to the likes of Katie McCabe over the past couple of months, but then you had the recent scandal this week where we walked off the pitch during an untelevised friendly with Colombia because obviously they weren't playing it like a friendly. 2 yellow cards within 20 minutes, and then obviously Denise O'Sullivan had to be taken to hospital, and the players just said, no, that's enough. I'm wondering now, we're all readying ourselves for Italia 90 vibes. And again, I'll put my hands up and say I've a vested interest in the Irish national team. My employer very heavily involved with them. I'm not going to get into the hows and the whys and stuff like that as well. Not because I'm keeping a secret, just because this show has nothing to do with my employer. But I do have a vested interest. I've met a lot of them. I've got to interact with them through that. So I want this to be an Italia 90. There's a part of me that feels like it has potential to be Euro 2012, though, as well, with the way things just seem to be turning. Or it has the potential to be like Saipan, where we have this tumultuous build-up that actually binds the players together. So how are you feeling as we come into this? Like, how is this sitting for you, and what are you expecting from this World Cup campaign?
It's very interesting you mentioned both Jack Charlton and Italia 90 in that opening, because yeah, brilliant. Listen, Italia 90 was arguably the greatest moment in Irish footballing history, but it wasn't our first goal in the major tournament. Euro 88 came before that, and Euro 88, yeah, we got the good results against England, but it wasn't great overall. But it was that gave us a kind of a springboard situation, because we had these players coming into their first major tournament, and suddenly they had experience. And then we went to the Italian 90, we went to USA 94, just missed out on the Euros in 92. That's what I'm looking at this tournament that most, because we still, like, again, it's been a rocky enough couple of weeks, as you say, particularly this in the last few days. I will give a lot of credit to Vera Pauw for having the wherewithal to pull the players. And like you kind of got bad vibes, at least I did anyway, when I saw 20 minutes before the game that the Colombians had asked for no media to be present. Now, usually behind closed doors, yeah, you're fine, no fans, whatever, grand. They're a regular part of football. England and Canada had another one on the same day, a couple hours before Ireland and Colombia. But media, there's usually one or two allowed in. And the fact that the Colombians asked for no Irish media present, that rang alarm bells straight away. So it wasn't a massive surprise that something happened. But overall, I like this group is, because as you mentioned, Australia, led by one of the best players in the world. Canada, another very, very solid team. But even from obviously that was pot one and pot two. Ireland are in pot three. Pot four, you know, like Zambia, South Africa, Haiti, and you're like, right, all these teams that are making either their debut at a World Cup or they've been once or twice. Never, not massive experience. And then who's top of pot four? Nigeria, who've been there 10 times. So you're like, right, great lads. You couldn't give us like a debutant as well as us that we might look at it. And I don't think it's an unfair viewpoint for their local media and their reporters to have. They're looking at Ireland as the winnable group in this, as a winnable game in this group, but that's not the basis of it. Like, they're not going to be looking at Nigeria against Australia. They'll have a chance, maybe. They probably won't beat them. Nigeria against Canada, similar situation. Nigeria against Ireland, they're looking at us as, okay, if we're going to pick up points anywhere. The funny thing is, I'm looking at the other way around and I'm going, 80-something thousand in the opening game against Australia. Good chunk of that's going to be Ireland. Yeah, like I like on mano player on player. Australia have a better panel. Australia red squad, as you mentioned, the best player in the world, Sam Kerr. But I can see that being a real kind of reeling in the years moment, where you're going to look at this in 20 years' time, played by whatever new music, whatever is good in music these days. I'm not up to the times. I just put There She Goes by the La La La's on again, and I just have that ready. I just see maybe us nicking something off Australia, and even then, even if like, oh, we lose to Canada, we draw with Nigeria, we don't go through, that'll be the moment where it's looked at in 20 years ago. This is where it started. It's like Kevin Sheedy against England in '88. That's the moment where Irish football and Irish women's football got their this huge situation. And you could look at it in 5 or 6 years. We got a young enough team coming through. If Vera Pauw starts to stay on as well for a few more years, then you can look at it as kind of bringing this next generation, because you can say that the people in Saipan in 2002, that squad was inspired by the people in Euro 88. And you could see maybe then the Euro 2016 squad and Euro 2012 squad was inspired by the World Cup in 2002. So it is all about this kind of build this kind of nucleus now, where if they get on, like, even the achievement itself to get there, like when you look at what Irish women's football was like in the last, even go back 10 years when that protest easily. Like to come on lead that much in that space where we're now going to a World Cup like that, and we've only ever been to two in there to three, sorry, in the men's side. So to get to a World Cup for the women's side is an incredible achievement considering where they were 10 years ago. I'm hopefully optimistic. If we go out and it is a Euro 2012 situation, I won't be disappointed in any way because it is a phenomenal achievement to get there, and we're gonna put it up to them.
Yeah, I agree. And I was at the France game. I was also at the Zambia game a few weeks ago. What kind of makes me feel like I don't feel well, the one thing I really don't want is for us to be what the kind of Irish men's team have been in recent years of glorious losers. Do you know what I mean? Where we put it up to a big team, but ultimately we come away with defeat. But ultimately the way we're putting it up to a big team is by remaining defensively resolute. And then kind of, trying to nick a goal and win 1-0. You know what I mean? And the way that we've won all our big games, like Ray Houghton and Giant Stadium, you know what I mean? That's how Ireland win these games. Jason McAteer, Netherlands, like again, when you think back to all these great moments, tends to be 1-0, kind of nick a goal when we kind of just, put our backs to the wall. I think this team is changing. And I think and I want to discuss kind of, how it's changing, the specifics of why, but I think this team is changing to be a more attacking minded team. And what I liked was the first half against France, we were brilliant. We played them off the park. Again, we struggle against organization. We struggle against kind of teams who know how to dictate pace and play. We can do that and be bullies against better teams, but I don't know if we know how to do it. But then again, you look at the fact that we got a result against Sweden, you know what I mean, in the qualifiers. You look at the fact that we went out and won when we needed to against Finland. So we can beat teams when we need to, but when that happened, we did it as a team who did the old Irish way of being defensively resolute but nicking a 1-0. Now we can be attacking. We can dictate the terms against teams. I don't think we figured that out. So I am going in and being realistic and expecting we probably won't be in it by the final group game. But can we beat Nigeria? Can we beat a Nigerian team who are talking about striking during the tournament because they're in that much of a shit show of a situation where, the FA isn't paying their manager. They're not paying certain players. They're taking the bonus for themselves. And the manager himself, who is sticking up for the players and trying to get them their money, is also the public wants him sacked because of how poorly he's performed as their manager. So I think we probably might we'll probably put it up to, I think, if I'm being honest, what I realistically expect is the Australian-Canada games to go like the France game, where we show ourselves and give a good account of ourselves for 30, 40 minutes and then get picked apart by absolute quality. And I think Australia and Canada are going to be in it till the depths of the tournament. But I think we could get a win here against Nigeria, and I feel that that's a win in itself. So again, not the end of the world, because again, Vera Pauw has said that she understands where this is. I believe she has the full backing of the FAI. I'm quite confident from being part of my employers that she has the full backing there as well. So again, she, there's a lot to be positive for. And again, I think we will see this as a stepping stone, whatever happens. But a World Cup is a great spot for new stars to be made. And it's obviously going to be, everyone knows Katie McCabe at this stage. We know Denise O'Sullivan after this week. Sinead Farrelly, obviously, with her story. If you haven't heard of her, Sinead Farrelly obviously was the one who kickstarted a lot of the scandals that kicked off, particularly pertaining to bullying and abuse in the NWSL, which is the US Women's League. And then left football for a few years after being caught up in the scandal, lost her passion, but came back to Ireland to play and has gotten her place back and is obviously a potential game changer in midfield. So we have a lot of people that people will know through that, but I feel like the entire country is going to build a relationship with this entire squad, and there is a squad full of players there. Who do you feel that in the next few weeks, the entire country is going to be, who do you feel is going to make this their own? In the same way, say, Damien Duff did in 2002, Robbie Brady did in 2016. Who's going to be the person that we're speaking about at the end of this all? That maybe we're not now.
I'm gonna just take a brief jump out to go into kind of a worldwide view. Okay. And I think that if she's fit, the world will know Denise O'Sullivan's name in the next couple of weeks. Purely because a lot of our squad are already kind of household names in women's football in the UK, whereas Denise has been ripping it up in the US. But I'm gonna stick with that mantra for the Irish angle of it, and I'm gonna put Heather Payne in there. I think her work rate and her sheer tenacity of, like, you see her chasing down. I'll say if we looked at the stats tracker that they do, you probably have her up in terms of the actual kilometers covered in the game.
Yep.
She's well able to bomb forward. She is resolute enough defensively. Like, she's only 23 as well. She's ridiculous young. She's obviously been, again, but she's in the university system. She's in Florida. So it's like, okay, it's not quite your Arsenal, your Chelsea, or even your Barcelona or something, or Spanish, where you're like, okay, you're kind of here a weekend, we got, it's like, oh, building up a little bit. And I just think very similar to Duff, actually, too. I think that's a good call, because it's like, you kind of have her as someone who some people know, but then it's like, okay, she's gonna, if she can place her, but she repeats that kind of work rate. Like, if she's still chasing down a ball when we're 3-0 down, like, ideally we're not, but if we are against Australia, and you just see her putting in a crunch and tackle, it's like, yeah, you know what, fair play to you. Because even, as I say, if it goes the way that you're predicting, that a lot of people are predicting, that it's like, okay, we've got nothing really going for us going into the last game. It's like, some players might just go, sure, look, it's a game, we just want to be home now. I can't see how to pay me like that. And like, even from a kind of viral standpoint, she's got the best nickname in the squad, Window. Heather Window Payne. Like, come on, that's a real GAA style kind of Michael Brickwash kind of thing, where it's like, yeah, you know what, yeah. Like, I really hope that you just hear Desi Curran just go, Window Payne here, run down the wing, and like against Nigeria. So like, just from a sheer kind of, I love kind of old school kind of defender, where it's just like flies into tackles and like goes to the well and back again all through the 90. So give me Heather Payne if she gets a shot. But yeah, Denise O'Sullivan on a worldwide angle. I have to go.
Yeah, I agree. I did, and as well, like, kind of the way we set up with kind of 5 at the back but 2 wing backs, and their attacking wing backs as well. And that kind of the shape and formation throws off a lot of teams. Even France were really struggling in the first half against that. You could see they just didn't know. Like, and I don't know if you got to see, kind of, I put it up on Instagram, but I got a front row seat, and it was on that right wing where kind of, yeah, there was just they weren't coping with it well, and it does throw off teams. In a similar manner, the person that I'm pulling for is we got to meet Kira Carusa, Lily Agg, and Louise O'Sullivan in work a few weeks ago. They came in and did an event there. And they were asked similar question. They were asked, like, who we think is going to be the next big star. And Lily Agg, who I didn't really notice, and I would have never known this, is quite a mother hen figure within the squad, and kind of a captain without being a captain, whereas Louise Quinn is very much the on-field captain, the Keano, the Paul McGrath figure, the absolute wall and the absolute tank, but who actually galvanizes and gets people together and is shouting on the pitch, but in a positive way. They tipped Kira Carusa to be the X Factor. And I think she is going to be a worldwide name after this, because we have changed the style of play we have because of Carusa now, into being a team that can attack and can threaten. How scared were France of Carusa when we kept putting it, and she sits on the end of, like, she sits against the last defender, just trying to sneak in, while Katie McCabe and Payne on the wings are kind of just lobbing in long balls down to her. And she can get in there. And again, she just brings that X factor that we've never had. We never had that kind of proven goal scorer there. And we have that there as well, and we have a threat now in that. And I think Carusa is the one to watch, and I think it's someone that a lot of people are going to open up their eyes to. In terms of the overall tournament, the US women's national team are the bookies' favorite. They're going for to be the first women's or men's team to do a World Cup three-peat. And it's also Megan Rapinoe's swan song. Obviously, she's been a key player for them throughout winning those 2 consecutive World Cups. Who do you think is kind of their biggest challenger, though? England, obviously, are relevant, and they won the Euros last year with the Lionesses, but they also have a lot of injury concerns with the likes of Leah Williamson and Beth Mead being gone, and then they've had some key retirements as well. Who've you got it to kind of win it all in Australia and New Zealand? Who are the ones to watch?
Yeah, I mean, you kind of do have to go with the US in this situation just sheerly because I got Megan Rapinoe and Alex Morgan, like two of the goats of women's football. England is a real funny one because they had this great, obviously, success with the Euros, but they've just dried up in terms of goals at the wrong time as you want to come into a tournament. I don't know if Serena Wigman knows her best 11. Like, certainly not going forward. Certainly not from an attacking point of view. And I'm like, look, obviously they've been destroyed by injuries, so it's been tough to kind of tough look in that situation. For me, you're kind of looking at Germany as the kind of like the best opportunity to challenge. I think Germany would have won the Euros if Alex Papa stayed fit. And I think that she will now have a kind of target, a drive to go, well, I had my chance there to get another trophy, and it was taken away. Like, she's obviously brilliant through the groups, brilliant through the knockouts, and it was just the final that she just couldn't get back in time. And look, you can't argue with goals in that sense, and the kind of attacking style in Germany where they kind of press up really high, really high up the pitch. It's very similar. Like, it's very similar to a topic we're going to get onto in a minute or two with the GAA, where it's like we'll win it off you up there, and then we'll just have the support there, because there'll be three or four players all around. That's like, if you lose it up here, we're going to punish you in that sense. I am struggling to see how the US fall. Don't get me wrong, like, it'll be terrific. It's a terrific story one way or the other. Because if they win and the man Rapinoe gets to retire as a history, as an even more history being made. So, and like, I'm going to go with the US from that point of view. I'm going to go with Germany as the most likely in my mind to cause that kind of. If the US do slip, I think they're in the best position to take a match.
US have such they've got the better half of the draw. There's very few threats there as well. Sweden are ones to watch as well. They have that always the bridesmaid quality there, that they're going to be determined. They felt the sting of loss in the past few tournaments, that they will want to better that. I just don't know if they have the firepower to be able to do so and to overcome the US. I think the other side of the draw, though, is where you're looking. Germany, England's looking likely as the quarterfinal. That's going to be absolutely box office. Of course, Ireland could get out in second and take out England. It could be Germany, Ireland in the quarterfinal. Who knows? Best case scenario, if we're doing an Italian 90, that's how it goes. But I think our group is where you've got the ones to watch. Canada could take advantage of some weak big dogs. Like, you've got Spain, who've had a fallout between their camp. You've got like France, who have a lot to like about there, and they have Hervé Renard, obviously a legendary international manager, coming straight off, being the only team to beat Argentina in the men's World Cup with Saudi Arabia. So, there's a lot to like about them, but again, they just don't seem to be like peaking at the right time. Canada have that quality, obviously Olympic champions, and I think they're going to be ones to watch. But I think Australia are realistically the ones to watch. Let's not forget how important home advantage is in these tournaments. You know what I mean? Especially in burgeoning games. Like, you could argue that it's changed in the men's tournament, but I think even look at the Euros last year, England at home. You know what I mean? It matters. It counts. And again, not only that, but you have a team peaking at the right time. You've got a world-class superstar. And again, we're coming off Lionel Messi a few months ago, even in his mid-30s, took Argentina to World Cup glory just through sheer force of will and class. Stars matter in international football. In a team where you don't get to play with your team every single week, having the best player on the pitch is a huge difference maker, and Sam Kerr is there. That plus home advantage. I'm going to predict an Australia-US final.
It'll be tasty.
I'm interested to see. I don't know. Look, who cares? Australia to win, you know what I mean? And that'll make it feel better. Like, but also, I'm going to predict that we take a point off Australia and we're the Saudi Arabia this time. You know what I mean? We go in and we're like, technically, we deserve a rematch again for the World Championship. Yeah, we'll see. But Australia, and again, like, I think, how important is it as well to have that baptism by fire and look at Argentina as a basis for it? You know what I mean? In any tournament where it's taking place over a short amount of stuff, even I'll have the darts on the background. You know what I mean? If a player has a really difficult first round match, you're like, right, they are tournament ready. They're in the mode and they're actually warmed up where other players mightn't be. And Australia coming out of that group of death is only going to serve them well. So I feel like that's an interesting one to watch. Let's move on, because obviously it's a sporting summer summer here, and I do want to, we don't have much time, but I do want to touch on a couple other things. GAA finals today. We're taping this on Sunday evening, and both our All-Ireland finals are now finalised. Next week, we're starting with the hurling, Limerick and Kilkenny, a rematch of last year, but an absolutely tasty one. Limerick this year, it's very tough to tell how they look. You know, on one hand, they look vulnerable, they look beatable at times. It's not been their strongest year, but also, is that not the mark of a champion, where they're still winning when it matters every single time? And is that actually more impressive, and does that make them more ominous in the same way like Alex Ferguson's Man United used to be, like, you know, when they had the taste of battle and they still won ugly? That's actually where the true champions are made. They play against Kilkenny, who should not be here under Derek Ling. You know, they did the impossible in getting back here for this rematch in the first year post Cody. Who's your pick, and where are you kind of falling with Limerick Kilkenny?
The biggest thing we're learning year on year is that Limerick are very vulnerable before they get to Croke Park. If you don't kill them in Munster, you're not going to kill them. And like Clare and everyone is finding that out the hard way. Listen, as you mentioned, a remarkable achievement for Kilkenny to move on from the greatest manager of all time, arguably in Irish sport, and still like just produce the team that gets them to an All-Ireland final. Death taxes Kilkenny somehow get into the All-Ireland. But I can't see, there's nothing that I've seen from that Kilkenny side that will worry Limerick too much in that final. I could see it easily being maybe 6 or 7 points to Limerick. And listen, I don't mind if Limerick do 14 in a row. They still won't be halfway towards Cork's overall total of All Ireland. So let them win it. And it's not like Kilkenny can go further clear of Cork at the top. I'm all for Limerick this time.
Were you arguing for Cork to get an extra? Were you jumping on that bandwagon for Cork to get the extra spot because they were really good in the group stage?
No, because if you win games, you get through. Simple as that.
It was bollocks. It was such bollocks. It was literally like Ireland should be the 30-turn team because everyone likes us.
Sorry, if Cork had been like 8 points up and then like lost by a point or whatever, fine. But we scrambled against Clare, we scrambled against Tipperary. That's fine. Like if we'd beaten them, either of them, we would have been all right. So no complaints.
Okay, fair enough. Moving on, we had just today, so we are getting these takes fresh out of the oven. The GA, but again, we've had some time to prepare. It looked like this was nailed on after the quarterfinals. Dublin Kerry, everyone was like, right, we're getting it, it's happening. And again, look, we're coming off a classic Wimbledon final between the top two seeds, Alcaraz and Djokovic. Sometimes when you get the best two players or the best two teams, classic stuff happens. So again, I don't see this as a bad thing. But that narrative that we're seeing, I texted you beforehand yesterday and I go, I'm prepping for Dublin Kerry because there's no point prepping for anything else. Deirdre Monaghan had something to say, but then obviously the class just showed in both games, and they both seemed inevitable by the end, because again, Dublin and Kerry just have, or if it was a 60-minute match, you know what I mean? We may be talking something different, but it's not. It's 70 minutes and they have the legs to just see them pull away from them all time. Again, obviously, look, we're talking about Kerry looking for a second consecutive to consolidate themselves as kind of the new dominant force in the David Clifford era. But then again, you have Dublin getting their shit together for Dessie Farrell. Obviously, Stephen Cluxton's dramatic Royal Rumble comeback, and he hasn't conceded a goal since. Looking, it's their third championship since they won 6 in a row, so they're looking to get their championship back. Based off kind of the tight wins they had against Monaghan and Derry this weekend, who are you kind of installing as the early favourite?
For me, it is only going again. It's only going to go one way, and for me, Kerry are going to win this All Ireland final. I would say relatively easily. I've seen it's like the opposite of hurling. I've seen enough from Dublin to worry me about Kerry. Monaghan, like you never expected Monaghan to win that game yesterday, but they still put it up to them, as you mentioned, for the first 60-ish minutes, and like it was enough that I was like, okay, if Monaghan are able to do that, and Monaghan only really have 2 players you have to worry about, Conor McManus and the guy who's going to pass to Conor McManus. They're the only 2. David Clifford, Paddy Clifford, Sean O'Shea, Paul Gainey, Paul Murphy, Brian O'Buglock coming off the bench. Kerry have stars everywhere. And it was very difficult. Like Derry will be kicking themselves. They kept Kerry scoreless for 16 minutes in the second half. And when that run ended, they were still only a point up. That was killer. You don't get away with that in the All-Ireland semi-final. You get away with that in Ulster. You don't get away with it at the top end. But I just think that they're like Kerry, they were looking dodgy early on, and now they've clicked. And they've got 2 tough wins under their belt in the quarters and the semis. And you're looking at it going, well, are they peak? They're peaking at the perfect time. Jack O'Connor, this wise old head, he did it with them in the early 90s. He did it with the minor team, which a lot of these players have came from. He's been working with them for a long time. And I just don't see how Dublin can be able to shut down every aspect, every attacking outlet that Kerry will have peaking in the next in 3 weeks' time. So I don't want to go too, but I don't want to go too large. But I reckon again Kerry by 5 or 6. But it would not surprise me if it was Kerry by double figures.
Okay, interesting. Jeez, go and I love the hot takes. Bringing me back to Paddy Studio here, love it. But yeah, no, and to be honest, I used to get a lot of stick. You'll remember in the Paddy Snew Yacht days, because again, that was coming right in the middle of the drive for five and Dublin's dominance. And I was kind of, despite my accent, despite living around the corner from Croke Park and going to games and so on, I get stick for not being a huge Dublin fan, because I felt that their dominance ruined it. But I think it is interesting and good to have them competing at the top level. And it is more interesting to have them lose. I feel like this is going to be a battle that, like Limerick Kilkenny, we're going to get used to seeing this. And again, it's the most traditional All-Ireland final you can get. I think over the next few years, we're going to see these be the two dominant forces. And I think it's better if we have Kerry retain and we have Dublin really make them fucking work for it. So yeah, but interesting times anyway. Kento, lastly, thank you so much for joining us. I will let you go, but before we go, we're both huge Start fans. We're coming at this, the second biggest tournament of the year, and arguably for some the most exciting tournament of the year, because it is. It's 1 week. It's an adrenaline shot. There's less walkover games. The World Match Play Darts is on this week. The best 32 players mixing it up. Who you got for the darts?
Whoever wins in the second round between Michael Van Gerwen and Damon Heta. I put money on Nathan Aspinall, but Damon Heta, I was expecting Josh Rock to get through today, and Heta, who was one of the best players on the floor, has never really managed to translate it to TV, absolutely smacked him around. Van Gerwen, who had jaw surgery a few weeks ago, one of the most painful, reconstructed his jaw, and then went out on a Euro tour, averaged 107 and won it. And it's like, okay, that's freaky. So give me whoever wins between that second round. Presumably Brendan Dolan. He's against Van Gerwen tonight as we record. If he pulls off the biggest upset in dart in history, fair play to him. But I'm taking whoever wins, Van Gerwen and hoping that Aspinall can go to the final.
Okay, interesting. I would love to see Aspinall get one. It would be great. I do. He's such a nice, likable guy. Could both be out by the time you listen to this. Anyway, Kento, always a pleasure. At Kento CCFC on socials. Buy a paper. Go read him in the Irish Examiner. He is doing great work. And again, this is just now a hobby for him, because he's reporting on the real news now. He's reporting on the big boy stuff. So look, I appreciate after the couple of weeks that you've had, jumping on your spare time to kind of chat shit as always. Excellent stuff. And let's hope that we're completely wrong, and we'll be catching up again in a few weeks when Ireland are in the World Cup final. Who knows?
Imagine.
Kento, thanks so much for joining us here on page 180. I knew you said Paddy Snew Yacht.